In this video, I'm going to talk about 15 brawlers that are actually kind of underrated. You know, maybe they're not the best everywhere, but in certain situations, they're actually pretty awesome. First up, we got Crow. Now, technically, in my last tier list, I ranked Crow in the S tier, okay? So he's actually really good, but I still feel like he's kind of underrated because he still is not being picked very much, and he is so good right now. I also wanted to put him in this list because he does such a good job at countering really strong brawlers that are very actively being played a lot in the meta. He makes it way harder for brawlers like Byron or Pam to heal, and his slowing toxin gadget makes it impossible for tanks to get close to anyone, which is like, it's such a solid counter to them. It also slows down speedy brawlers like Max, Sandy, or Stu, all of which he can also outrange. Now, this gadget is typically the best to use on tanks, but no matter who you slow it down on, it's one of the best gadgets in the game. Additionally, his extra toxic star power is super good because he can actually survive additional hits from a lot of brawlers that would normally be able to take him out in 3 shots. Plus, you have a super, which is super versatile, right? No, it really is. It's awesome. You can use it on offense, you can use it on defense, you can use it to just run away. I mean, it's really great. Next, we have Frank, and Frank honestly is like, if you pick Frank in Power League, your first pick, shame on you. Don't do it because he is so easy to counter, but he can actually be one of the best brawlers to pick last in the draft. If the enemy team picks 3 brawlers that just don't have a whole lot of damage output, Frank can march right up the map and just corner brawlers because of how much health he has. This is especially true if you happen to have a healer on your team. Now, the only reason why Frank isn't a top tier brawler really is because he's hard to catch enemies within his range. But if enemies are unable to deal damage to take him out, he's got plenty of HP to spare, which allows him to then get into that range. I wouldn't play Frank in Heist, but in pretty much every other game mode, Frank could be an excellent choice, especially when you consider the fact that he has one of the strongest, if not the strongest super in the game. It's probably not the strongest, but it's very strong, okay? Up next is Colette. Colette is obviously a solid counter to tanky brawlers with a lot of HP, but she's actually still really good on certain heist maps no matter who she's up against because her super can deal so much damage against an enemy safe. It's like, it's insane. She can also do pretty good on defense with her main attack by keeping enemy brawlers weak. And you know, the idea is like, obviously you're gonna want your teammates to try and help, but then you can charge up your super and use it on offense against the enemy safe, which once again deals a ton of damage. And now that she has a gadget that is so good at keeping her alive, it's become even more difficult to get her away from the enemy safe, right? Her gadget paired up with her mass attack star power almost makes her impossible to take out, at least for a few seconds. And honestly, in Heist, that's probably the best build like most of the time. Next, we have Mr. P, and he had a recent major buff, and I still think that he is not being used enough as he should be because he is very good. He does still obviously kind of struggle against tanks, right? That's always been an issue for him, but he becomes a big problem for brawlers that can't shoot past his porters like Piper or Jean. He's such a good counter against them. Now, Mr. P's biggest struggle has always been charging up that first super, but now it's a lot easier because his shots will bounce and explode no matter which star power he has. Now, honestly, his gadgets aren't crazy strong, so you're kind of like good going with whatever you feel like. Now, he doesn't have a lot of survivability, so like aggressive game modes like Brawl Ball or Hot Zone, you probably want to avoid playing Mr. P, but a knockout bounty or gem grab, he's actually really good. I think you guys got to show him a little bit of love, especially if the enemy team has brawlers that can't attack through his porters. Now, next we have Nani, and I think a lot of people don't play Nani because her attacks are so wide that if you're playing on a map where there's a lot of walls, then she oftentimes will kind of like lose damage against the wall. But if you're playing on an open map, please consider playing Nani if you end up being a random with me, okay? Especially on maps like Shooting Star. Her attack has such a long range, and sometimes you can actually do really well attacking around walls with it. But then you have her autofocus star power and her return to sender gadget, which are both incredibly useful in Bounty. Like, I don't know why I'm not seeing Nani so much. It's like people go with like the same 5 brawlers for every single game mode, and they kind of sleep on Nani. Especially on maps like Shooting Star, where Nani's pretty much always going to have a really easy target, like Brock or Byron or Piper, where Nani can kind of stay further back and then completely obliterate them with a single super. Now keep in mind that Nani doesn't only have to be played in Bounty, okay? She can also be played really well on other game modes like Bridge Too Far for Heist, okay? She's really good, but with a little bit of a different build. You're gonna want her other star power and her other gadget to allow her to teleport to enemies right next to or right on top of brawlers, especially against brawlers like Piper or Sprout that often really struggle against enemies that are up close to them. This just goes to show that the map sometimes is even a little bit more important for a brawler like Nani than the actual game mode is. Up next is 8-Bit, 8-Bit, and 8-Bit is the slowest brawler in the game, and that is why I think a lot of people don't play him, okay? He's kind of boring, but he is very good. He's got great range. He can deal massive damage with just one ammo. And if you can get your super down with his plugged in star power, that's actually going to make him going from like slower than average to a little bit faster than average. And that's really where it comes down to with 8-Bit. If you can place down that super in a spot where the enemy team is going to have a really difficult time getting to. If you're playing a game mode or in a map where that is actually a possibility, then 8-Bit is definitely a brawler that people need to be playing more of. And because of that, the map that he's playing is usually more important than the mode, okay? He deals enough damage to play in Heist or Brawl Ball, and he's got the range and area control for Gem Grab and Hot Zone, and he makes a particularly good gem carrier because of his cheat cartridge gadget, which allows him to teleport himself out of situations that other brawlers might get caught in, like Terra's Super or Jean's Super. You probably don't want to play him in Knockout because he's just he's a little bit of an easy target, but other than that, find a good map for him, he's gonna do great. Next we have Colt, and Colt is one of the hardest brawlers to use. He deals tons of damage with his main attack and his super, but in order to deal all or most of your damage against the same target, it takes really good aim precision and movement precision. You got to mirror where the enemy team is going, and yeah, he's kind of tricky to play. That being said, if you have the skill and practice, Colt definitely has the speed, the range, and the damage to be an amazing brawler. This is why pro players playing Colt is like my worst nightmare, okay? He's especially good in Heist because once he gets the enemy safe, he doesn't really have to aim at all in order to get all of his bullets and deal just insane amounts of damage. And he even has that gadget that instantly reloads his ammo, which is amazing for Heist. Next we have Mortis, and Mortis could be the best counter to throwers in the game because it's so easy to dodge their attacks from just dashing away to dashing right before, like whatever. Like you guys know, Mortis is just such a great counter to throwers, but he's also really good against pretty much any squishy brawler that he can take out with just a few hits. You just want to make sure you play him on maps where there are a few walls for him to hide behind. Then he can use his creepy harvest star power to take brawlers out one by one. Now both of his gadgets really help him take brawlers out. I do think his survival shovel is a little bit better for tanky brawlers, and combo spinner is a little bit better for squishy brawlers, but it does kind of come down to personal preference. And his best game modes have got to be Hot Zone and Gem Grab, because depending on who he's up against, he's actually really good at making his way to the enemy spawn and keeping constant pressure on them while his teammates just like party on the zone, right? While Mortis is getting the kills. It's actually really fun, right? He also does really well in Bounty, and while he is fun to play in Brawl Ball, I don't think that he's that great for Brawl Ball right now. He's probably a little bit too risky to play in Brawl Ball, and probably also a knockout as well. And don't play him in Heist. If you're a random and you're playing with me on Heist and you are Mortis, I will curse you with bad randoms. That's the curse I will give you, because you in that case would be the bad random. Next is Dynamite, and Dynamite is one of the few throwers in the game, so that automatically makes him a good counter to specific brawlers on the right maps. In particular, Dynamite's really good against brawlers that he can one-shot with his super and his demolition star power. But Dynamite can't be an early pick if you're playing Club League or Power League, because he just struggles so much against so many easy aggressive brawlers like Mortis or BB, right? And that means you definitely want to play him as either like a counter to other throwers or as a last pick, and you know that the enemy team is going to struggle against you as a thrower. His best game mode is probably Heist, because kind of like Colt, his shots are very powerful and hard to hit. And he can be okay in Brawl Ball because his super allows him to blow up the goal at the same time that the ball is rolling in, and like nobody can get in its way. It's like literally impossible for somebody to block a goal shot like that. And then his satchel charge gadget is just like unfair. It's ridiculous. It's super, like you get caught by that gadget, you're gonna die. Like against the skilled Dynamite, yeah. Also I wanted to talk about is Grom. Now Grom has been nerfed a ton since he was released, and he definitely needed to be. But even after all of his nerfs, I think that people kind of like were like, oh, he got nerfed, I'm gonna stop playing with him. He's still really good. I don't think he's as bad as many players think he is. He's not like the most amazing, but he is solid. On bounty maps and knockout maps that are mostly open with a few walls, he's actually really good. He has some of the furthest range in the game, he's a thrower, and his super still stretches plenty far out and does a lot of damage. And then you have his watchtower gadget that hit that alone makes him amazing on maps with lots of bushes. I just think people backed away from Grom a little bit too much, and on the right map and mode, he's still pretty great. Next we have Karl, and he is another brawler with a main attack that can pierce through targets and has great range and width, okay? Sometimes his pickaxe takes a little bit too long to get back to him, so he kind of struggles at close range, but at long range, oh my word, he can actually do a lot of good map control. Plus, he can handle close range fights in 1v1 if you have walls for him to like bounce his pickaxe back at, so like, you know, it comes back really fast. But by far his best ability is his flying hook gadget. This thing is so good. You can just easily get where you want to. You can, like, people think they're safe and then you gadget up close to them and then there's no way they can avoid damage, right? Like, it's really amazing. It's kind of risky to use his super on offense because like you're just like an easy target. Not to mention the fact that it can get interrupted by a lot of gadgets and supers, but against throwers and sharpshooters where he can get really close, it's actually really good at countering them. You just kind of have to be careful with it. Now, Karl certainly isn't the best brawler in the game, but he's an okay pick for a lot of maps and modes and is definitely underrated, I think. Next, we have Griff, who recently got a buff to his damage from his main attack, and he is a big problem for tanky brawlers. And there are definitely a lot of like solid counters to tanks that you obviously think about, like Spike or like Ems or obviously Colette, right? But I think people are sleeping on Griff a little bit. I wouldn't say he's the most amazing, but at the same time, I feel like he's just not being used as much as he could be. Even if just a few of his projectiles from his main attack hit his target, they still deal a lot of damage, and he has a lot of range to be able to like do that. Like, he's kind of like Shelly using her gadget, except all the time, right? Plus, his super is still one of the best supers in the game. Not to mention the fact that his piggy bank gadget pairs up really well with his playstyle and can break up walls, which makes him actually pretty solid in Brawl Ball. In fact, you can make entire strategies that revolve all around Griff breaking up certain walls in the map to really throw your opponent off that way. On top of Brawl Ball, he also is really good in Hot Zone, which is probably his best game mode. Probably just avoid playing him in Knockout or Bounty maps. Next is El Primo, who's kind of like in a similar situation to Frank, since he has a lot of health and deals a lot of damage up close. He's not a brawler that I would pick very first on a map, but against the right brawlers, he can be an incredibly strong third pick. His best game mode's probably Heist, since he can automatically slam the safe with his super once he gets in range, and even without his super, he still has a really high DPS with his main attack just by itself. And along with Heist, he's also not too bad in Brawl Ball either, since you pretty much just get like super cheesy goals with like kicking up a ball, supering to where the ball is, breaking the walls and kicking it in. Like, that's always fun as El Primo, right? Even as a last pick, I probably wouldn't play him in Knockout or Bounty, but at least keep him on your radar. Next, we have Bull, who has really high DPS, and that automatically makes him super usable in Heist. Now, his super allows him to quickly approach the safe, and then his T-Bone injector gadget helps him survive a little longer while he's on top of the safe. Additionally, if you can get Bull onto the safe with his Berserker star power activated and somehow nobody's attacking you, that is like the best situation where he will just shred through that safe. Honestly, on maps with a fair amount of walls that like give you some good cover, I think that Bull is one of my more favorite brawlers to play because he's like, he's just so like, he's such a bully, right? You push people back, you get in on the safe, and they're like, ah, I can't do anything against the Bull. You just focus on dodging shots all the time and attacking the safe. It's really fun. And also, I think he's kind of underrated in Brawl Ball as well. Most of the Brawl Ball maps either have a lot of grass or walls, and once Bull charges up his super, he can make some pretty quick plays by shooting the ball forward around those walls and then using his Stomper gadget to kind of catch the ball and then get a goal in. He's obviously going to struggle against long-range brawlers, but if he can't sneak up on enemies in grass or corner them, then no brawler is really going to be able to deal with Bull, especially up next to them, except, okay, maybe Shelly. Shelly could, but yeah, most brawlers would really struggle, and Shelly's worse than Bull anyway. And finally, we have Nita, and let me just say that Nita probably shouldn't ever be your first choice, but at least not right now, okay? But there are certain maps that really favor mid-range brawlers, and Nita is actually a pretty strong mid-range brawler, right? Most of those mid-range maps are like in Gem Grab or Brawl Ball, where her Bear With Me star power adds a lot of pressure to control in those game modes. And additionally, on most heist maps, she's also a viable option. I just wouldn't pick her on a bridge too far because those pathways require a lot more long range. She just really struggles against that. But you know, where you have a lot of like walls and stuff like that for her to kind of get close, then she can do a solid job. Now, Nita definitely does not have the range for Knockout or Bounty, and I can't think of any maps in those game modes that she would do well on. She's just kind of an interesting brawler that I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on her. Like I said, she's a little underrated. And there you have it, 15 brawlers that I would say are a little underrated at the moment. With 56 brawlers in the game, there's going to be some brawlers that are really good in like one or two unique situations, even though they otherwise aren't maybe that amazing. So if you think there's another underrated brawler that I didn't talk about, please let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe for more content on this channel. I'm trying to go for 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. I've said this before, but at my current rates, I'm not going to make it. So I'd really appreciate you guys smashing that subscribe button. Also, check out my Free Fire channel, my Clash Mini channel, my Free Fire channel, and this awesome Brawl Stars video right here. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in Brawl Stars.